Welcome to Otome Games. We love our cartoon boyfriends. Thank you all for making it on Thursday late afternoon. I keep forgetting it's Thursday, and I keep forgetting that a lot of people are still kind of coming into the con, so thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Little introductions first. My name is Sonia. My pronouns are she, her. My very first Otome game that I played was Hakuoki, Demon of the Fleeting Blossom. Yeah, that one's epic. On the PSP. My favorite Otome game is Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly. It's pretty great. You should play it. My best Otome Game Boy is Mamoru Kishi from Kissed by the Baddest Bidder, which is a horrible game. Don't play it. I just like him a lot. And then I also went to school for like game design or something, I guess, so that's like unrelated, but kind of cool, fun. The other disclaimer is that a week ago I lost my voice really bad and I strained it really hard from like being a little too excited about stuff, so I just recovered, but if I occasionally let out a cough, it's okay. I'm not used to talking this much for the past few days, so that's my disclaimer. But anyways, let's talk about Otome games. Yeah, if you're here, I would assume you probably know what the genre is, but I'd also assume a lot of people here don't know what it is, and we're just kind of intrigued by what this concept could be. So, Otome games basically literally translate as maiden games, and they are primarily story-driven games targeted at a female audience. In them, you play as a female protagonist, of course, and you pursue a variety of love interests. Most of them tend to be male love interests, but some Otome games also have female love interests, so it sort of depends. In most Otome games, you make choices to determine which character you hopefully end up with romantically, and then bada bing, bada boom, there's like romantic connection. You're like, oh my god, these anime boys are so pretty, and it's pretty epic. Gotta say, it's pretty cool. Well, now you know basically what Otome games are. What is not an Otome game? So that is a lot of stuff, and a lot of people do mistake a lot of things for Otome games, and that is not them. It doesn't make it worse, it's just not that. In general, josei muge games, which means games that are just in general aimed at a female audience, they are not always Otome games, usually not. They tend to be games that have a lot of pretty anime boys, so you might mistake it for one, but you can't date them, you're not really playing as a girl. That's games like Ensemble Stars, Token Rambu, they're not Otome games. Boys love or yaoi games, a lot of people call them Otome games, but you're not playing as a girl in them. You're playing as a boy and you're dating boys. Similar, not an Otome game though. Yuri games, however, are not quite so cut and paste and like so easy to determine. Yuri games, you're playing as a girl, so that's one check, and then you're dating girls. Maybe a check, because in some Otome games you can date girls, but not all, so it's very tough to classify, and a lot of people kind of debate Yuri games and if they're in the genre. But generally, they tend to be for a male audience, not always, and in the other cases, most people in the Otome game community kind of tend to agree or have this unwritten rule that you need at least one male love interest to make it an Otome game, and then all the other criteria. So that's kind of what people feel. And then finally, we have the villainess reincarnation isekai subgenre, which is increasingly popular, so it's pretty big right now, and that's not an Otome game either. They often are anime that are heavily inspired by Otome games, but they tend to be inspired by really pretty outdated Otome game tropes, so I don't know that I say they're super representative of the genre. They can still be fun, but they're also not an Otome game. And before we get too much further, I still want to kind of give some background info, which I find is always helpful. So I want to run through some terminology that is pretty common, and some of it I'm probably going to use just offhand. So people who play these types of games, you're going to know all this stuff, but there are plenty of people who don't really know this stuff, so if I say something offhand, I want to make sure you know what I'm talking about. OLVN, or OELVN, stands for Original English Language Visual Novel. Otoge the Western community tends to use this term to refer to Otome games that are in English, but it's also a term in the rhythm game community, so it's kind of confusing. Roots, if you're pursuing a character romantically, you're playing their character route. That's what that is. Endings, different characters will have different endings as you're pursuing them, usually. Sometimes there's only one per character. So if you make good choices, bad choices, that can kind of determine which ending you get. Main boys, most of the games tend to have also a canonical love interest. And so you usually either have to play his route first, or you have to unlock his route by playing the other guys in the game. And you tend to kind of get a lot of the mysteries of the game solved through the main boy route. CG stands for character graphic, and it's basically a fancy, cool, awesome picture you get during the iconic moments of the game. So if the characters share their first kiss, then you're gonna have a little nice picture that you can collect digitally, not like an NFT though, just like in the game, of the characters kissing or something, right? And it's just nice to kind of see that progress that you have, kind of like an achievements or sort of. MC stands for main character, which, speaking of main character, oh my god, that's a whole nother can of worms, in this community especially. So there are a lot of different terms, first of all, that people use interchangeably. So some people will say MC, main character, MC-chan, heroine, protagonist. It's all the same thing. They're the same. A lot of times they also tend to not be voice acted, whereas the other characters might have voice acting for them. And it's kind of expected because in this kind of genre and in a lot of games, game developers want players to sort of project onto the character, and so oftentimes if it's a slightly more faceless character, you might find it easier to project onto them. This isn't, of course, always the case, and of course not all Otome games are like this. So in some Voltage Inc. games, which you can kind of see on like the left-hand side there, she literally has no eyes because they wanted to make her literally faceless. Not narrative-wise, just so you can be like, that's totally me, because the only thing different about her is my eye color's different, but otherwise I look just like that. So people don't tend to like that. And oftentimes these main characters tend to kind of be like sort of weak-willed and sort of submissive, which is another point of contention in the community. So it's generally agreed upon that people who play Otome games in the West prefer to kind of have more feisty and tough protagonists, whereas a lot of games that are originally Japanese might have slightly more submissive protagonists. That's, of course, not always true, but that kind of tends to be the trend. But there's also, you know, the idea that just because a protagonist is like a submissive character doesn't mean she's a bad character. There are plenty of protagonists like Beniyuri in Psychedelica, The Black Butterfly, where she's kind of a meek and quiet girl, but it makes sense narrative-wise and it adds a lot to the story. So it kind of depends on the game you're playing, how strong the protagonist is. And if you are looking for a protagonist who is really feisty, has a lot of sass, I don't know, and is super cool and tough, and kind of maybe even mean, I'd say two of my favorite examples are those two girls in the middle, which is Christina from the second reproduction, that white-haired girl, and then Hibari from Variable Barricade, the brunette girl. They both are super feisty and fiery, and they don't lose that throughout the game. They just learn that sometimes it's okay to let love in too. So it's a nice message. And then you also have the case of Norn 9's protagonists, which are those three girls in the bottom right corner, in which that game lets you select from 3 different protagonists who all are voiced, they all have faces, and they all have very distinct personalities. So that's a great choice. That's also in English. These are all in English so far. Yeah. And of course, as there are many tropes with the girl characters, there are even more tropes with the love interests, especially, you know, the male love interests. Here are some of the most common ones you will see in an Otome game. First off, we have the Ore-sama character. I don't like this one, but it's like one of the most popular. I don't like them, they're so mean. Generally, they're like an arrogant alpha male or whatever, and they're really popular. I don't get it, but Miyabi from Enchanted in the Moonlight is a good example of that. They also tend to be like the main love interest. Not always, but that's common. We have the Genki guy. This is one of the best ones, I'm telling you. He's like stupid and really lively and like energetic, like, you know, just really cute and wholesome. I know, exactly. And so Impy from Code Realize, he's a great Genki guy. I love him. We have the Playboy or the Flirt, which are actually, believe it or not, two different types that people often confuse. So both are flirty and are open about their flirty affections with the protagonist, but flirts tend to have kind of more of like an accessible, sincere side, whereas the Playboy, you might, you know, play through their character route and be like, oh, he just hates women, as opposed to like the Flirt being like, actually, I love all women genuinely and I fall in love with every woman, whereas like the Playboy is like, actually, you're all disgusting and I'm gonna use you. So that's kind of the differentiation there. Iki from Amnesia is kind of more of the Playboy, and Zen from Mystic Messenger is more of a Flirt. Tsundere characters, also very popular. Most people are familiar with this term, but in case you're not, it's characters who are pretty hot and cold. You know, like first they're sour and then they're sweet or whatever, right? So, yeah. Takaru from Collar X Malice is an example of that. Kudere characters, they act very cold and distant at first, and then they eventually open up and show their soft side once they're comfortable. Saito from Hakuoki is definitely a kudere. And then yandere characters, woo! They're like kind of like freaks, you know? They might seem like a really nice dude at first, and then it's like the second you open up, they're like probably gonna kill someone or something. But like, it's in the name of love, I guess. I like them too. So there are plenty of examples, but Toma from Amnesia is kind of like the classic and memed upon Otome game example. If you know Cage, you know about the cage. Yeah. There are a lot more than that, but these are like the main ones. And anime adaptations are also another part of Otome games you may already be familiar with. A ton of anime adaptations have come out based on Otome games, and some have led to Otome games after the anime. They tend to be like not amazing in general. But like, it's very hard to adapt a game in which there are many different endings and many different characters that the protagonist can be with. So it's kind of like, well, what do you do for the anime? And most anime kind of take the bad option of just like, let's just have every guy introduce himself and then the anime ends, I guess, and that's like it. And you're kind of like, well, what even is this story? The game must suck too. But like, no, I promise. The better adaptations tend to try to kind of like tie it all together in a story way that actually makes sense. Amnesia, I think, is a great one because it really goes into that, and I think the anime does a pretty good job. And a better adaptation, in my opinion, also tends to try and have the protagonist, get with a guy at the end instead of just leaving it open-ended. Because it's just, I think, better narratively in this genre, so, you know? But none of them are great. And of course, Otome games have not always existed, sadly. Some of those anime out there, they needed something to adapt from. So, where did they come from? Well, I'm gonna tell you. We have Angelique in 1994, the very first Otome game. It came from an all-female team, so it's pretty epic. The creator, I forget her name, but she worked on games with her husband's company, and she kind of wanted to branch off and then make a game for girls, right? And so she and a bunch of other women made Angelique, and it's pretty cool. They wanted to see more games targeted at women, and so they came up with that, and now we're here. But it set up a focus on romance and kind of like simple gameplay mechanics instead of just a visual novel setup. So yeah. And then we, of course, also have Tokimeki Memorial, Girls' Side, which was in 2002. It's like a female-targeted version of the original Tokimeki Memorial series, which you play as a guy and date girls, and so they did a girls' side where you're, the reverse. They're pretty non-linear plot structure overall, and they're more based around stat raising instead of, again, just reading, but it's very well-known. We don't really have it officially in English yet, despite that, which is dumb in my opinion. but it helped introduce a lot of new people to the genre, especially in Japan. And in general, of course, shoujo. Earlier games have super duper borrowed from themes from shoujo and like retro shoujo, very pure and like sexless romance. Later games aren't as strict as them, but that's kind of the trend. And as Otome games became bigger in Japan in the early 2000s, we here in the US only kind of just started to have this slow trickle of them. So most, of course, were Japanese games or games that were originally Japanese and then localized or translated into English, the first of which was Yojimbo the Bodyguards, which was on PC in 2006. Those are the dudes on like the, sorry, I have to keep orienting myself, left, even though it's on the same orientation on my computer, so I don't know why I have to think. But it's a very ugly looking game, but also it's like made me cry every time I play it. It's not good, but like I'm very emotionally attached to Yojimbo. It's very comedic. I still cry, I don't know why. And then we have Princess Debut, which was a DS game in 2008. That one kind of focused more on rhythm game aspects, but also it had those romance aspects where you pick a guy to take to the dance with you, basically. And it's a good one. It's a classic. And then we have Hakuoki, Demon of the Fleeting Blossom on PSP in 2012. Yes, I'll talk more about Hakuoki later, but that game did a lot for us here in the States or English-speaking countries. And then we have Sweet Fuse at Your Side, PSP in 2013. It's a very unique game. The love interests in it are not really typical shonen pretty boys. It's pretty unique in general because you're kind of like solving a mystery and it's also kind of funny, but yeah, I'll talk about that one more a little bit later. And then, of course, way back when in like the 2010s, 2000s, whatever, there were a lot of Ulven titles. There were a lot of online Flash games that people played, specifically by a creator called Pactasis. She was very big back in the day. She made online dating sim Otome games for people in English, and a lot of people kind of got their start there, me included. But yeah, and there were a couple of fan-made English patches for games, the main one being Starry Sky and Spring, and so that one kind of became popular as well early on in the States. Hakuoki, okay. This one keeps getting claps, and I'm like, good, it deserves it. It's one of the best, what can I say? So, it's basically like the bread and butter of Otome games. There are so many different forms of Hakuoki on so many different consoles. There are games on a billion consoles. There are spin-off games. There's a musical. There is so much merch. I have like an Ida bag dedicated to one of the characters. And yes, I did put my two favorite characters on the screen because they are the best. So it's kind of like Minecraft or Skyrim, but Otome game because of like, if you have a console, it's probably on that console so you can play it safely, it's fine. The love interests in this game are also all based on historical figures. So specifically based on the members of the Shinsengumi in Japan. So it's kind of like, you know, founding fathers dating sim almost in a way. If you want to like orient yourself a different way. And weirdly enough, a lot of Otome games in general let you date the members of the Shinsengumi who are like real people. So there are like a billion Heisuke Todos that you can date in Otome games, and they're all based on the same guy in history. And he looks nothing like the real guy, obviously, but it's like, okay, sure. There are also a lot of really fun like vampire demon things in this game, which is like, okay, it's a very serious game. There's a lot of like history in this game that's very interesting. And it's very heavy and emotional and depressing. And then it's like, okay, we're at the vampire blood-sucking ankle scene. Hell yes. So it's a pretty good game, gotta say. And maybe because of like the intensity of it, it was actually kind of originally aimed at men when they brought it over to like English. I guess they thought that they were like, oh, it's so many guys in this game and they're all like buff and they're all like fighting demons and stuff. Men must love this. This is what men like. So like, guys, come on, play this game. But like, I don't know if that really worked because that wasn't the market in Japan. Obviously, it's an Otome game. Please do play this game if you're a guy, go for it. But like, you know, it's not the actual target audience. So anyways, that's Hakuoki. It deserves its own slide for just being very special to me and everyone. So while Otome games may have started coming over to the West in the early 2000s, there's only kind of been this recent boom in English language dating sims and Otome games in recent years, I'd say. There are a ton of factors that have contributed to this, some of them kind of being these here. So mobile games have done a lot to make dating sims and Otome games and just dating games or whatever in general way more popular, because people can just easily download it on their phone, pick up their phone, play their dating sim, put it away. It's very accessible. It's just super easy. Mystic Messenger kind of exploded because it had this aspect where the characters like call you. They're not actually calling you, but like they're calling you, so you gotta answer that phone call. It's your boyfriend and he loves you. So like, you know, it's pretty important. A lot of like original English language titles have been coming out. So as people learn more how to do kind of like indie development, they make their own games because they want to see more, so they make them. There are lots of them now. Seduce Me 1 and 2 are kind of popular ones. They're about demon boys and stuff. That's a trend you'll see. People like that. I mentioned Pactuses earlier. She doesn't really make games anymore, but she used to make a lot of Flash games. And then right now, another really popular one is Our Life Beginnings and Always. It kind of focuses on customization in your character and in your love interest. So based on certain choices you make, your character's appearance, and you can customize your appearance, and your love interest's appearance can kind of change throughout the game, and it follows you guys from early childhood to adulthood, so it's really cool. And yeah, Steam and itch.io, you can basically find so many different original English language visual novels and like Otome games on there. Sometimes they're made by just like one person, and there's a lot of heart in them. It's very sweet. So yeah, you should check those out. Anime does a lot for helping people learn about Otome games. People watch these shows, they realize, oh my god, I really love these pretty boys, I wish I could date them or something. And then they do a little research, and then they learn, oh, this is like kind of a genre that exists out there. I can like kind of do this for real, even though they're still not real, but like it's kind of for real. So that's, I mean, I feel like that's how a lot of people start, you know? There are also a lot of other genres of games, like farming games or RPGs that happen to have these dating aspects to them. So Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley, a lot of the Fire Emblem games. You play them, and then you see there's this additional feature where you can like marry someone. And that's my favorite part of the game. I play all the games that have that feature. And then, but if you're playing them for the first time and you don't really know about these other genres, you play that and you're like, what are more games like this? I really like that I get to marry this person. That is like so fun for me. And then you fall down, you know, the rabbit hole. So it's what happens. And then the Nintendo Switch in general recently just helps bring awareness to Otome games' existence, I'd say. The Switch has been getting a ton of Otome game releases in English lately. Some indie ones, some localized Japanese games, some digital-only releases or like eShop-only releases. It's a great resource, and people sometimes just kind of stumble upon these titles there, so it's pretty cool. Yeah, well, we used to live in a time when Otome games did not come out very often. That time sucked, and now we get so many more. I know these are all technically the past, but like also some of these just came out and were like delayed or whatever, so it's right now. It's now. More on the way soon. But yeah, we get a lot of Switch titles, like I said, so there's basically every couple months or every few months there are announcements online about like, hey guys, we're gonna bring this title over, you know, to English, and you guys will be able to play it soon, so get excited. And you better believe people get excited. It's pretty cool. Also, a lot of companies like Manga Gamer, they tend to put out a lot of localization surveys asking fans which games they want to be, you know, translated to English. And these surveys are not limited to just Otome games. A lot of people who play it's just for visual novels in general, so not just this one genre. But the Otome community is quite dedicated, I would say, and there tends to be this agreement before each localization survey that the Otome community is kind of going to push for like a couple specific titles to end up in like the top 5 most voted for games. That usually happens each year. And it doesn't guarantee that a game is going to be, in English and that Manga Gamer is going to put it out, but it definitely helps to show that there's interest in them. So I always like to contribute to those surveys. And of course, there's always a billion Olvin titles coming out, so a lot of indie English stuff that comes out. You're always going to find some new stuff, some really underground stuff, some that's really popular, so it's always going to be there. And yeah. It's, rest in peace, PS Vita. I miss you so much. I mean, I still have you, but like, I miss you as a concept. These are like, I've mentioned these a bunch, but if you're interested in playing Otome games, and you don't really know much about the consoles, these are kind of like the main consoles that you'll find them on. Of course, there are others as well, but these are the main ones. The PS Vita has so many titles of Otome games, especially in Japanese, but in English too, you'd be surprised. But like, does anyone here like own a Vita? Raise your hand. Oh my god, that's way more than I thought, but like, I mean, me too, but like, wow, okay, awesome. But in general, the Vita did not do that well here. It did in Japan. Oh, it's beautiful, I love it. It did in Japan, but not really here. Most people, maybe this is like the wrong audience to ask, but considering you're at this con, at this panel, but like, you know what I mean. Yeah, pretend that didn't happen. But yeah, so they aren't really making anything new for the Vita, so you can play a lot of older stuff, but there's nothing new coming out. Switch is kind of like the new Vita, though, so that's what it is to me, at least. It's the new PS Vita. So there are lots of Otome games and visual novels in general in Japan on the Switch, and that means they bring a lot of those to English now, and they translate a lot of them. So that's what all the new titles are coming out on. It's really great. Steam is also a great resource. You're gonna find a billion Otome games, dating sims, whatever on Steam. They can vary in quality, but like some great ones are on there. Hakuoki is on there. You should play Hakuoki. Psychedelica, the Black Butterfly is on Steam. You should play that one especially. It's really good. And then of course, apps. Sorry, I punched the microphone. Anyways, there are gonna be a billion apps. Most of them will probably have optional microtransactions, but like, if you want that option, that's there for you. And depending on which console you're playing on, some games may even take advantage of their platform and include some pretty sweet mechanics, gotta say. These are some of them. This one, Osmopia, it's a really interesting game. And by interesting game, I mean this game is like really bad. I hate this game. I've never met anyone who like has an attachment to this game. But it has like a unique mechanic kind of where like you start pursuing one guy and then halfway through his route, you can either like abandon him and go for a different guy or continue with that guy. So they have this little like rejected symbol next to freaking the Tin Man guy. I forget. They're all like Wizard of Oz characters in this. Yeah, so it's interesting. Most Otome games don't have that. Most have it where you pursue a character, you kind of are stuck with them, and will get a good or bad ending. But here, you can still get someone's good ending if you just happens to be dumping someone else for them. So it's interesting. Sweet Views at Your Side I talked about a little bit earlier. So it's kind of like Danganronpa or Phoenix Wright, in which you are kind of trying to solve a mystery. You have this really colorful cast of quirky characters. Like those dudes are all some of the love interests, and there are a couple more actually who aren't pictured. They're not like, they're kind of weirdos, I would say. But like, it's great, it's great. It's just a cool game, but it's only on PSP, so if you don't have a PSP, you can't really play it, which is sad. The protagonist, Saki, she also she has this kind of feature mechanic thing that you can kind of enable and take control of, where if you guys are in the middle of an investigation, trying to solve something, and all the dudes are saying stuff that is kind of ridiculous, or you don't agree with, or they're just being stupid, you can have this explosive insight moment where you like press a button and she yells, "What's wrong with you?" at them. And it's supposed to be like explosive insight because her hair is sort of supposed to make her look like a bomb, so she's like exploding, I guess. So yeah, it's a very fun game. It's a good one. Bad Apple Wars has a cool mechanic. It's also one of my favorite Otome games. A lot of people hate on this game, but it's really good, I promise. So sometimes you'll have these moments called soul touch moments in which there's like an intimate conversation or something, and then suddenly it cuts to like this, and you're like, wait a second, what's going on here? But like, it's totally safe for work and like innocent, I promise. It's just, I don't know. They already drew the clothing for them in the CG, and then they have this version, I don't know why. But like basically in this moment, the character is like very sad about something, and you have to like touch different parts of them, I guess. Like, but it's like weird stuff, like touch his ear or something and like poke it, and then he'll like say something nice to you and be like, oh, thank you, oh, I love you or something, right? But then if you touch a place he doesn't want you to touch, it's like, they have these little blue lines. I don't know if you can see it, but on the one on the right, they have these blue lines to signify that like, that was wrong, he didn't like it. And so, it's like, yeah, if you do the bad ones too much, then you'll get like a bad ending. But if you do the good ones, you get the good ending, I guess. It's really, I don't know. But I love this game, it's okay. And then we have Psychedelica, specifically Psychedelica of the Black Butterfly, the best Otome game ever! The first game in this series, there are two, includes this shooting mini game, which is kind of different, right? Oh yeah. So basically, you gotta shoot butterflies and rack up your points by shooting these butterflies. And why do you need these points? Well, you need these points to unlock side stories in this beautiful flowchart, which is accessible the whole game. It's amazing, you don't even have to save. The flowchart is just so beautiful. All games should do this. So those like locked ones you can unlock with the butterfly points or whatever. And sometimes you can't get a specific ending if you haven't viewed a specific side story. So that's kind of your incentive to like do this mini game. So it's pretty epic. I love it. Well, so we've learned about all these Otome games, but like you really want to play them now, and you've never really played them before. So what do you play? I mean, you can play whatever you want, but like if I had to tell you what to play, not even based on my personal taste, but based on like, I guess the community's feelings as a whole, these are kind of like the main ones that are the most popular, that people kind of would recommend the most. Obviously Hakuoki, like, come on, Hakuoki, you've talked about it so much. It's a great series. It is very long, but like, you can do it. It's not that long. It's not like Umineko long, so you're okay, I think. And that's, again, on so many different consoles. You got PSP, PS Vita, PlayStation 3, Steam, 3DS, probably others, but those are some of the consoles. You can probably find it somewhere, you know? A lot of options. Caller X Malice is a really popular series. Yeah, that's like one of the really popular ones. And it's kind of a game in which you're like a cop or something, right? And all the guys are kind of like cops or detectives, but like, they don't really feel like that. They're like a fake cop, so you kind of feel okay about it, I guess. I don't know. And it's like you're solving a murder mystery or something, and like weird stuff is happening in the city, you know? So it's kind of like intense, I guess, but it's a pretty popular game. It's mainly, I think, on PS Vita and Switch, and there are like different versions of it too, so you can find that one there. Code Realize is also very popular. It's a game that is very steampunky. You're playing as a very sad girl who, she can't touch people, otherwise she like kills them, right? So it's very sad. Basically X-Men Rogue, but like sad. But like she's a very popular character. I mean, Rogue is sad, but like she's a very popular protagonist. A lot of people love the protagonist. It's a very popular series. It's also on PS Vita and Switch. And then I mentioned Mystic Messenger, of course, as well. That's very popular. It's on your phone, very accessible. The characters, like I said, they call you on your phone or something, so it's like real life, basically. That's how it works. And apps in general are a very, very easy place to start if you want a story that's kind of usually more often low stakes, nothing super heavy usually, and again, on your phone, so if you don't really have like a Switch or a Vita or whatever, it's easier to get this to get this game and play it and stuff. So, you know. And if you want to play your first Otome game in Japanese, I don't speak Japanese well at all. I don't play in Japanese at all, but the person I ran this panel with the last time I did it, she is very fluent, and she's played a bunch of Otome games in Japanese, and so these were kind of her recommendations for beginners who are learning the language and want to play some Otome games. So most of these will kind of have the common trend of being slice of life games or games that take place in a school. And the reason why that type is most often recommended for beginners in the language is because that vocabulary is going to be way, way simpler than something that's like high fantasy or extreme sci-fi, where they're going to have a lot of like random words that are not like actual vocabulary or things that make sense. So that's going to be very difficult, I imagine. But yeah, these are some of the titles she recommended and on which consoles. So yeah, pretty good games. And yeah, I have plenty of time for questions. Normally this is like a 45-minute panel, so yes, red shirt. Yeah.
I actually have one more suggestion for what you're learning Japanese.
Yeah.
There's a game called Chronostasia for PSP.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually really easy to understand despite being not set in school or anything.
Yeah.
I've been playing it lately. Oh, and another nice thing about Vita is you can play PSP games on it too.
Yeah.
I think that's a really, really good place to start.
Yeah, so yeah, you were saying that there are, what was it, Chronostasia again?
Chronostasia.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation for people learning Japanese who want to play Otome games. And yeah, I also forgot to mention that you can play PSP games on the Vita, so it's a great resource. Yeah, any other comments or questions or, yeah.
Have you ever kind of a moment maybe where you just are so baffled or confused or what did I just witness that you just had to turn it off and walk away for a while?
I don't know that I ever turned it off and walked away. I kind of have like a high tolerance for those things. I play a lot of visual novels, not just Otome games, and they can get weird. But like some of the ones, I won't like name the game because it's like a spoiler, I guess, but it's a terrible game anyways. So it's like, why would you even care? Like there's one game where like one of the romanceable guys, he's like the human version of the tower that the girl was trapped in for most of her life. But then he's also like the human version, I think, of like her dog, but then also like the human version of like her magical powers or something. It's like really weird and confusing, and this game is horrible. And it doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know. I don't like it. It's really weird. Yeah, that whole game, I just, no. Yes, you.
Do you have any recommendations for games where the main character isn't specifically identified as she, her, where they have more of an open, identity, so that way anybody could inclusively play the game?
Yeah.
Or identified as an Otome game?
Yeah, so a lot of original English language titles nowadays do include that option to select your gender. I think Our Life is, Our Life, oh my god, what's the subtitle for that one? Our Life Beginnings and Always or something like that? Yeah, that one in the top corner. You only have one romance option in that game, but again, like I said earlier, you can kind of customize their personality based on your choices, because you guys grow up together. So you impact one another. And in that one, I'm pretty sure you select your own pronouns and you select your appearance as well, so it's really cool. There are a lot of miscellaneous games in originally English that are like that.
Otome also has.
Oh, yeah.
It doesn't have any really customization, but it does just say they.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Psychedelic of the Ashen Hawk, the protagonist is a girl, but she like dresses as a boy the whole time. And they are kind of ambiguous as to like, I feel like that one's very up for interpretation because that is like the preferred way that Jed, the protagonist, portrays himself. So a lot of like fan headcanons in that case. But yeah, anything else? Yeah, you're new.
I was gonna say, for recently an game on Kickstarter called I Just Want to Sing, and it throws the genre so that there's somebody who identifies as non-binary,
Mhm.
and they're trying to make friends and say friend zone.
Yeah, so the game recommended was I Just Want to Be Single, and that's on Kickstarter right now, in which you are, non-binary, and you're just trying to find, like, friends and stuff. So that's a really cool concept. I didn't know about that one. I'm gonna have to look into that. Yes, sure.
Before you were mentioning the surveys that you do you know where we can participate?
Yeah, so the specific localization survey that I mentioned was the Manga Gamer one, and I forget what time of year they always do it, but they always post it on their Twitter when they are opening that survey up. I feel like it's usually in the spring, if I'm remembering right, but I could be totally wrong. But they always post updates about that on their Twitter, and in general, if you go to the Otome Game subreddit, if there's any type of like surveys running related, they'll usually post them there too, so people know. But yeah, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I guess I'm telling you on that, but I guess have you tried the Utena game for the Sega Saturn?
There's like an Utena dating game?
It is pretty much like a dating game because you play as
Whoa.
like an original original girl and you make connections with the different characters.
Huh.
It's and there's like character drawing, but then there's like a secret roots and like bad endings and things.
Whoa, yeah, I had no
It's
clue
very
that.
fun to run if you are a fan of that.
Is it in English or are they fan patches or?
There's fan patches.
Okay, cool. That sounds like a definitely interesting title. Darn, wow. Yeah, you over there, sorry, your voice.
So I have a huge backlog problem, and I'm sure many others here also have it. I think of some like ideas of what to play next, but any other games that you recommend that are like really fun and kind of like bring me back into that like Otome game mindset, something
Yeah.
amazing.
I mean, a new one I played recently was Variable Barricade on Switch. I don't know if you played that, but like,
I started, it's really hard. The beginning is really hard to get
it's a very, very fluffy game. It's like the kind of game where you're playing as a rich girl, she's kind of mean, and she has no friends. And everyone's like, you need to make more friends. And then suddenly her like rich grandfather or whatever is like, okay, girl, you gotta marry like one of these 4 or 5, I forget how many, 4 or 5 guys. You gotta marry one of them soon. You gotta tell me which one you're gonna marry. Otherwise, I'm like disowning you or something, right? And then she immediately finds out all these guys are like super effed up. They're in like not in a moral way, but like money laundering, or like one of them, he's just really stupid, or like things like that. So they all have like intense flaws, and like she does too. And they're all just like so endearing. You should give it a try again, because it's just like such an endearing game.
Who are these men?
They're so literally all of the romance options at the game, they're like all total idiots, and I love them all so much. And she's an idiot too. She's like, oh my god, it's so funny. That game.
We're best friends, so that's I'm like, okay.
Yeah, she has a really good best friend too. Yeah, that game is really, it was so cute. I haven't finished it yet, but I played one of the routes and I was just like, oh my god, that was amazing. So that's a recommendation right now. Yeah, anything else? Yeah.
I'm curious now, I didn't really take full notice of what is the rightmost visual from? Like, looking
That is Jed from Psychedelica of the Ashen Hawk. She's the protagonist in that game. She's very cool. Yeah, in the back.
I have a copy of Hakuoki on the PSP, but I heard that the different releases on the the 3DS and the PS4 have different side stories. Is that true?
So a lot of the different releases of Hakuoki do have different content. I would say if you want to try out Hakuoki, the best versions with the most content and new characters you can pursue also are the PS Vita versions and the versions on Steam. They're basically split. So what they did when they came out with those versions is they took the original game and they split it in 2. So yes, you do have to buy 2 games now, but it is very, very long because they added a lot of side content and they added like 3 totally new characters that you can date, and I think 3 also characters who were pre-existing that you can now date. So they added so much new stuff to it. So yeah, the Vita version and the Steam version, which are Hakuoki Kyoto Winds and Edo Blossoms. Those are definitely the best versions of the game to play with a lot of stuff. Yeah, that's what I would recommend. But the 3DS ones and stuff, they're also different, but yeah. Yes.
For individuals that don't like to read,
Oh,
do you
God.
have any Otome games where they have voice acting?
Okay, that's gonna be tough because most voice acting is in Japanese.
Okay.
And oftentimes when there is voice acting, especially in English, it's only partial voice acting. God, what in English has full voice acting? I can't remember if yeah, I was gonna say Seduce Me, but I can't remember if it's full. Is it? Yeah, Seduce Me definitely has English voice acting, but I can't remember if the lines are fully voiced. That's something that's definitely hard to find, especially because, again, a lot of times protagonists are not
I
voiced.
think the first game is free.
Yeah.
So you can actually get it, and the second game is actually cheap. It's not that
Yeah.
hard with prices.
Yeah, so I would try that, but God, that's hard. Yeah, the back again.
Seduce Me does have completely full English voice
Okay.
for all of the romance options, and one of them is actually the voice actor for one of the characters from Beastars. It's the wolf guy, whose name is eluding me right now.
Wait, which character does he play in Seduce Me?
I don't remember, it's been like 5 years.
Yeah, I haven't played that one in a while. Oh my God, that's fun. Okay, so yeah, I guess Seduce Me is fully voice acted. Yeah. Any other questions or no? Yes, the pink.
What are your top 5 favorite Otome?
Otome games? Okay, Psychedelic of the Black Butterfly is my favorite. I really love Bad Apple Wars. I really love Hakuoki. I really love, oh God, this is so hard. I do love Yojimbo, is the one I talked about earlier. That's really ugly, but I love that game. And I really love, oh God, this is so hard. Maybe the second reproduction is number 5. That game's really good and kind of stands the test of time for me. Yeah.
If someone wanted to theoretically, for a friend, dive into the deep end, what would you recommend?
So what does the deep end entail? Like the weird ones?
Like the stuff that people can't recover from once they fall.
So, unfortunately, if you're looking like for the effed up, that is sick stuff, where it's sick throughout the whole game instead of just like one ending or one route, that is hard for English Otome games because they don't tend to translate those ones as often. If you're playing visual novels that are aimed at men, that's way more common because way more of those come out, and so we get a lot more variety, like something like Magfest or Euphoria, right? Those are like Disgustorama, but kind of good, but like Disgustorama. For Otome games, what are the ones that like disturbed me the most? I mean, Psychedelic of the Black Butterfly is kind of intense, and like a lot of bad things happen in that one. Norn 9 has some endings that are really effed up. The character Ron in general, his route is like, what the hell? But he's also my favorite, but like, you know. So it's like, what the hell, man? I think Nameless, the one thing you must recall, also has a lot of endings that are kind of like, I'm sorry. But that's a really good game. Yeah. That's probably what I would say, but they're not going to be like gore splatter fests or whatever, because we just don't have a lot of that in English.
Strictly theoretically.
Yeah, strictly theoretically. In theory.
I
Yeah.
think I have maybe one recommendation, but I would say it has more of a trigger warning than like, screwed up.
Yeah.
Euphoria.
Oh, Q4, I have not finished it yet,
Yes.
but I did
There are
start
some
it.
horrible bad endings.
Yes.
But those are just like trigger
And I think the terrible bad character is my friend's favorite character in Pio Fiore. But that game I've heard, yes, does have some bad endings that are intensely bad. Yeah.
right now.
Yay! I hope it's fun. Yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
Do you know of any dating sims like Japanese or English involving non-humans, like along the lines of Monster High?
Along the lines of Monster High in English or Japanese.
Monster Prom is what I meant.
Yeah, Monster Prom. Okay, I mean Monster High and Monster Prom, same thing. Both epic. So you said in Japanese or English, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the ones that comes to mind immediately is in Japanese. It's called Jobachi no Obo, and it's known as like the bee game. So like, there are bees in it. They are giant bees. That's a weird one if you want a weird one. That's a weird one, but it's only in Japanese. And every year, you bet when the localization surveys come out, I write that one down and I'm like, I want this game. So that's one of them.
I don't remember the name of it, but there is an Otome game that's monster themed, and most of them are just like cute monster boys, but one of them is straight up a skeleton, he's named Skeletana.
Aw, yeah, with the bow.
So wait, the B one is called.
Recommendation for animals is what's it called? What were the pigeons? It's like
Oh, the Hunchable Boyfriend, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Shoot, he's the best character, so whatever. Yeah, it was called Jobachi no Obo.
They're also.
Oh, Dairoku, yeah, I haven't played it yet, but they're kind of like fantasy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yokai.
Cafe Enchanté.
Cafe Enchanté. It has a cool guy.
There's a headless.
Yeah. Headless guy who has like fire head or whatever, and he wears like a helmet. That's pretty cool. Yeah, the blue shirt.
If somebody has an experience that portrays emotional maturity or wholesomeness as best as possible, do you have any recommendations for that?
For, you said emotional maturity and wholesomeness?
Yes.
Emotional maturity, so I know I've said this one so much, but Psychedelica the Black Butterfly, I promise. One time I wrote a paper about this game because it's like so sincere and it's like really sad, but then also really hopeful, and it's just like a beautiful, beautiful story. And it also, a lot of people are like, some people don't even want to call it an Otome game, even though there are character roots, but they're like, it's just a visual novel because like there's not enough romance. There is, but like the characters go through a lot, and there's a lot of like intense emotional stuff that is dealt with really well, in my opinion. I think it's done really well. That's my biggest recommendation for that. Yeah. Anything else? We have a few minutes left, but also, yeah.
Will this PowerPoint be available somewhere for people who didn't take notes?
Well, you're not being tested on it, so you should be okay.
My personal notes.
For your personal. I do have, I guess I should go to the first slide. No, but I can send it to people. I mean, because I don't really know how to just put it online or what would be best, but there's my Twitter handle there, so feel free to also like ask me any questions. Sorry, my voice keeps cracking. Afterwards, I'm not used to talking for like an hour. Yeah, so you can feel free to reach out to me and I can like send it to you if you want to look at it. Yeah. Yes, the flower crown.
I have a recommendation for the mature and wholesome is Cupid Parasite.
Oh, I need to play that one, yeah. I've heard really good things about Cupid Parasite. Yeah, that one's on Switch. Yeah, that one looks really cute. I'm so behind on my Switch games because so many suddenly came out and I was like, oh my god, I was not prepared for this. So I'm very slow with the Switch releases. Yeah, any other questions or comments? Yeah.
On the opposite side of the spectrum, a lot of these are like young girls, like teenagers, any like adult spicy recommendations you have?
Yeah, so spicy, so are you looking for the protagonist is an adult woman, or are you looking for, and like with a job, or are you looking for like saucy content? Either?
Either.
So a lot of the Voltage Inc. Otome game apps will have you playing as basically like an office worker, right? So most of those games, you're gonna play as a woman who's like an adult woman with a job and a life. Not all of them, but most of them. If you're looking for like steamy oink oink, Fashioning Little Miss Lonesome is one that's in English that, you know? The Bell Chimes for Gold is in English, and that also is, you know? Royal Space Princess, or no, Horny Space Princess, F Me Royally, that game is also, you know, in English. Seduce Me, kind of, right? Yeah, Seduce Me has steamy content. Oh my god, what is it called? Cutie Demon Crashers or something like that?
Yeah.
That game, yeah, is in English, and that also has spicy content, and it's really cute. It's short but cute. Yeah, those are the ones that immediately.
Olympia Soaring has some too.
Oh my god.
Like explicit?
Not like super spicy.
Okay. But like, it's getting there. Like one step below, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah. I mean, there are a lot that are like almost spicy, but those are the ones that are explicit. Like, okay, I'm seeing things on the screen right now. Yeah, I won't go into too much depth. This is not 18 plus, I don't know. Anyways, yeah, anything else? We have like 5 minutes left, I think. Yeah.
Is there anything that's being localized that you're really excited about?
So this one, I don't know that it counts as an Otome game, but it is a female protagonist, so it's probably not an Otome game because it's not really like dating and stuff. But I'm just gonna say this one because I'm really excited for it and I've been waiting so long. It's a game called Sona Nil, and Manga Gamer is releasing it, and they announced it a few years ago, and they still haven't finished it yet. And I'm like, I know it takes a long time to like put these games out. There's a lot of text to translate, but like this one is taking a very long time. And the protagonist girl, she's so cute, and the art is so cute, and the music is so beautiful, and I'm just very excited for this game. So yeah, Sona Nil. It runs okay. Okay. Yeah, anything else? Yeah.
Sorry, it's like one more time.
You're okay.
I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if people know about it, but there's a visual novel database.
Yeah.
Just finding stuff specifically.
Yeah. So yeah, they mentioned that the Visual Novel Database, or VNDB.org, is a really great resource for finding visual novels. They do include all the ones that are in Japanese too, of course, but they'll specify on the page if you can play it in English or other languages even. But that's a great resource for finding stuff because they have all these tags for genres, for specific character types and all that, so it's very helpful. Yeah, any last minute comments, questions, concerns? If not, cool. Well,